Hi everyone, and welcome back to Prof Dan Tutorials. Now, are you navigating the employment-based visa process like the EB1 or EB2 NIW? And perhaps you are wondering how visa limits, the visa bulletin, and perhaps retrogression affect your journey to permanent residency. Then this video is a must-watch. Every year, employment-based visas are capped at 140,000, with country-specific limits that can create backlogs, especially for high-demand countries. The Visa Bulletin is your guide to knowing when you can submit your adjustment of status if you are present in the US or your immigrant visa application if you are abroad. Now, whether you are waiting for your priority dates, which I'm going to explain in this video, to be current, or you are planning your next steps, it's really important to stay informed because that is going to give you the edge to navigate this process. So watch this video to the end, and I'm going to break down all of these concepts, and all this can help you to avoid delays and stay ahead in your immigration journey. So let's break this down for you. And this will be a way that is quite easy to follow. And I'm going to use relatable examples. Now, to start with is the employment-based visa limits. The visa bulletin for the upcoming months is typically released in the second or the third week of the preceding month. For example, the visa bulletin for February 2025 would have been released in January 2025. That is it. Now, it's always published by the United States Department of State, specifically the Visa Control and Reporting Division, which is responsible for determining the movement of immigrant visa cutoff dates and releasing the monthly visa bulletin. I'm going to advise you, you can check the description of the video and you will see the government source, the credible source, where you should always check on monthly basis. Like I said, usually the second or the third week of the preceding month. And when you check this, you always see the updates from this government source to see the visa bulletin that is being released. Employment-based preference visas are usually capped at 140,000 per year. This limit includes all categories under the employment-based system, such as the EB1, EB2, EB3, EB4, and EB5. However, in cases where an unused immigrant visa from the previous fiscal year remain, then the annual cap may be exceeded. But please take note, each of the subcategories of the employment-based received a specific percentage of the annual cap, which is the 140,000. Specifically, EB1, EB2, and EB3, each of them gets 28.6% of the total limit. For EB4, which is the special immigrant, and EB5 for investors, each of them receives 7.1% of the total limits. And here is an example. So mathematically, that means that out of the 140,000 visas for every given fiscal year, EB2, EB1, or EB3 will typically receive approximately 40,040 visas annually. So that is the annual cap for each subcategory. Now, what do we need to know further? What about country of chargeability limits, which you will always find on the visa bulletin? Now, to ensure fair distribution, no single country can exceed 7% of the total available visas in any given year. And what that means is that when you check the visa bulletin, you will see a column for all chargeability areas. You will see some listed countries, like for example, India, China. They've consistently been on that list, and perhaps the Philippines. This is because these are countries that have a high demand of visas, often face backlogs because the number of applicants exceeds the supply for their country, which is the 7%. And that's what happens. Next, we're going to look at the visa bulletin and the visa queue. When there are more applicants than visas available in a category or country, a visa queue or what they call backlog forms. Now, it's important to know that this visa bulletin is the tool that helps you, the petitioner or the beneficiary, to understand where you stand in this queue. And the visa bulletin has two important charts. Each time you open the visa bulletin from government sources, you will see two specific tables. One, the dates for filing, and two, the final action dates. So I'm going to talk about that briefly because this is another part where people ask questions a lot. And I've received many questions about this, even though they are written point blank on these US sources, official sources. But again, what I'm trying to do, because my videos is always for educational purpose, I try to break this thing down in a more relatable manner so you can understand. So talking about the date for filing, that specifically tells you when you, the beneficiary, can submit your application documents. It can include your adjustment of status. If you are in the US, it can include your employment authorization card, things like that. Travel parole if you intend to travel. And for those of you abroad, you will receive, email to that effect on what to do. However, take note that for the date for filing does not necessarily mean that you will get a visa yet, or your visa is already available for you. However, it gives you the opportunity and the edge to prepare your application and to submit your application. Second is about the final action date. That typically tells you when a visa is actually available, meaning your case can now move forward. So, as an example, if the visa bulletin, for example, shows, let's say, 1st August 2023 for your category, whether EB1 or EB2, something like that, then you can apply if and only if your priority date is earlier than that August 1st, 2023. And that brings us to what is priority date. Your priority date is usually written on the notice of action that is sent to you. It's usually the date you file your application, say for EB2, and is admitted in by USCIS, and they send you a receipt notice, you will see that priority date there. It's not the day you eventually receive the approval, no. So that's even a good thing. So you must know your priority date for every beneficiary whose petition have been approved. You must take your priority date to heart, and you must always check that against the visa bulletin. And it's also important to know, I've shared this in many previous videos on monthly visa bulletin, that you must take note for every given month visa bulletin that is released, USCIS or the government sources will state to you categorically which of the dates you should use or follow, whether you are to follow the date for filing or the final action date, because usually they are always different dates that appear in these two categories. So be mindful of which one are they saying I should use this given month. At times it varies. Be mindful of that. You will see that on that source as well, or check the description for the link. So next, let's look at immediate availability. So sometimes if the demand is low, a category or country will show as letter C, as in cat, in the Visa Bulletin. And what that means is not cat. It actually means that visas are currently available to all qualified applicants. We are hoping, is it possible, maybe possibly, someday in the future, EB2NIW will become current again? Because for a very long time now, it has not been current, and that's because there are more demand. However, in the EB1 visa category, you would see for all chargeability areas, it's been marked C. And that means anyone with an approved EB1 petition whose country falls under all chargeability areas in that category can proceed immediately to, either start their visa processing abroad through the consular processing or adjust their status if they are in the US. And the next thing to talk about is visa retrogression. This is something just for informational purpose, something you should be mindful of because it is possible. Occasionally, the dates in the visa bulletin may actually move backward instead of forward. And when that happens, that phenomenon is called visa retrogression. It has happened before and it can still happen. This happens when more people apply than there are visas available. And that's either because the annual cap has been exhausted or is expected to run out soon. In that kind of scenario, you might see visa retrogression. For instance, imagine that the visa bulletin for, let's say, EB2NIW category shows 1st July 2023 when it's released, let's say this month. But next month, you see the date change to 1st January 2023. What that happened is retrogression. So in that case, if your priority date is now, say, 1st May 2023, you are now no longer eligible to proceed until the cutoff moves forward again. And that's why I advise all self-petitioners, in particular for the EB2NIW or EB11, please always check the visa bulletin every given month. And I also do advise, just for educational purpose or informational purpose alone, that if you have already been approved, please start preparing for the next stage. Preparing things that you will need. For example, your medicals. Have you done your medicals? For those of you abroad, have you put together your documents, maybe your birth certificate? If you are married, your marriage certificate, some of the necessary things you will need. Put them together so that in case when the visa bulletin is released for a given month and you see that your priority date is now current, please go ahead and submit immediately. If you wait too long, maybe the subsequent months, what if there is visa retrogression? Then it's going to be, oh, and I know. And that's my advice to you all. All right, so key takeaways in this video is that Employment-based visas are subject to annual and country-specific caps, which can create backlogs. And that's what we've seen in the, especially in the EB2 category that NIW also belongs. I advise you use the Visa Bulletin from USCIS, from government sources to track when you can file your application or when a visa becomes available so you are aware. Third, be aware of visa retrogression and plan accordingly, especially for popular categories like EB2 and EB3. Who knows, maybe EB2 may tend towards that direction because we now have more people applying than before. If your category shows C, especially in the EB1, you can act immediately. No waiting is required. Understanding all of these concepts, you, especially self-petitioners, can navigate this employment-based visa process more effectively. So always stay informed and always check the Visa Bulletin to know where you stand. And that's going to be it in this video. If you have been following Prof. Dan YouTube channel on, Prof. Dan tutorials on YouTube, please continue to follow us. Thank you for your support. On the screen, you see all our social media handles. Please follow us, make comments, share your experience so you can encourage someone else to, apply for these categories. People are working in credible area. They have proposed endeavor that's really meaningful that can contribute further to the United States growth. So please let them come in, let them apply. Your country of residence where you reside is not a barrier. And I will see you all again in another video. Take care and bye bye. God bless.